Welcome back into the 7 financial blind spots. David, this is one we've had in the series for over a decade, and no one seemed to care about it years ago. Now everyone cares about it, and we're talking about inflation. How important is it to factor inflation into whatever retirement plans you're building?
I think it's so important. Whenever I sit down with my clients, I usually talk about what's called person A, person B, right? And person A typically doesn't pay attention to inflation, and person B understands that, what a gallon of gas cost whenever they were a kid, a gallon of gas costs today, and what's it going to cost, 20 years from now.
Kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, and those things are always going to be in flux, and so we have to pay attention to them and be able to, overcome, that obstacle.
Yeah, because inflation has been called the silent killer for years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really does. It's here. It's not going away. We hear the numbers on TV all the time, and really doesn't mean anything to the average consumer until they go to the grocery store a lot of times and find out, oh, that's what these inflation numbers mean.
Yeah.
You can barely fill up. Back in the day, my mom would go into the store with a $20 bill. There was no credit cards back then, and fill a shopping cart up now. Go into a store now with a $20 bill. How many things do you think you put in the shopping cart?
Man, pretty much.
Not many, right?
Nothing.
I remember, I'm 57. I remember the 10-cent candy bar back in the day.
Yeah.
Now I think it's one candy bar is over $1. I mean, that's inflation we've seen, and they've shrunk the size of the candy bars too.
Yeah. When my wife and I, we got married 8.5 years ago, and we could fill up an entire week's worth of food for $80.
Yeah.
And now it's like 200.
It's crazy, isn't it? And probably not as many things as you were getting before.
Exactly.
Wow. All right. So, starting to sound like my grandpa. Well, I used to be able to do this, but I mean, what can anyone watching do to help combat inflation? Can you help them with that?
Yeah. I think in general, the rule of thumb's always been save 15 to 20% of your income, right? And that's not a made-up number.
Right.
Most people think like you're just pulling that out of thin air, right? And more times than not, people, they'll save 3% in their 401k and they get a match, or those different things. We run into that all the time, but
Just
most people
not enough put aside though.
Yeah, no one's actually sat down and taken a look at why am I saving what I'm saving, and a lot of that is because of inflation and the flux and the flux of the market.
Well, look at our grandparents would work for a company for 30 or 40 years. They retire, and the company would still pay them. They get a pension.
Yeah.
Do you see many pensions these days? Not many that aren't self-funded. Now, a 401k is a self-funded pension. You're putting your own money away to get streams of income. That's why it's important, like you say, to put more than 3% a year in.
Yeah.
I mean, start with 3% if you have to, but increase that by a fractional number every single year, because the only person you're hurting by not putting enough money away is yourself.
Yeah. And with our clients, we like to sit down and we look at non-market-based assets versus market-based assets, right? And so more times than not, people don't realize that there are non-market-based assets that have guarantees associated with them that allow for the ability to add more certainty today, but also give them certainty into the future. So
very, very important, folks, to find out the alternatives and the ways that you can be helped to counterbalance this inflation, making sure you have enough money in retirement to take the worry out of living in retirement, right? So if you see the contact information on the screen, if you're curious and want that plan put together to help you combat inflation and all the different enemies in the financial world, we call them financial termites, David Foster's your guy. So you see the contact information right there on the screen. Get in touch with today and meet with him as soon as next week.